Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, do we have any startup founders listening today, or entrepreneurs, or anyone thinking of entering the world of venture capitalism? Well, if you are, you're in for a treat today, because Itxaso Del Palacio is joining us from Notion Capital. And Notion is a European VC fund on the B2B SaaS and Cloud space, with more than 700 million in assets currently under management. So I've invited her on to the podcast today to discuss why there isn't just one route to entering the VC industry, or a one-size-fits-all path, as she shares her amazing origin story. It really is inspiring. And we'll also explore how product-led growth will be the key to the expansion, explosion, and even domination of European software companies globally. And for all you startup founders listening, she'll also share what traits she's looking for in startup founders and what the best founders do to blow away investors beyond their entrepreneurial vision. So some big takeaways there. But enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to London here in the UK, where Itxaso is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about your journey, how you got here, and share your origin story and your unconventional journey into the world of VC with everyone listening?
Yeah, hi, Neil. Thank you for inviting me to the podcast today. It's really great to be here with you. So I do have an unconventional story to where I am today. And I do think that probably a lot of the investors and venture capitalists that you interview, they have a pretty unconventional story, because there is not a clear path to get into VC. But personally, I studied engineering. I have a very much an engineering mindset. I grew up in the north of Spain in a very regular family. I danced classical ballet for 13 years, and it was absolutely my passion, but I was on the average group rather than on the top group. And you know that in ballet, unless you are in the top group, you have no future on it. So at a certain point, I had to admit that was not the career I could take. But definitely build a lot of discipline and rigorous thinking and personality on my side. I went to study engineering, as I said, went to work as an engineer for Daimler, the car manufacturer, which is probably one of the most boring things I've ever done in my life. It was incredibly boring. I was there in my early 20s thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be here until 65 years old. This is not going to happen. So I left that, and in fact, it was my parents encouraged me to go and study something else, because I was critically bored on that. And so I went back to school and I did my master's in engineering. I studied a PhD, because I really like teaching. I like being with people. I like, I had kids that I was tutoring on the side. I love teaching. So I thought, look, I can be lecturing at the university. So I went back, started my PhD, which was around technology transfer. So in the early 2000s, when the first universities were taking technology from university and taking it to the market. And obviously the best universities doing that were on the West Coast, or MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, and that took me to do the research at UC Berkeley, where I got into the Entrepreneurship Center, the Lester Center for Entrepreneurship at the business school at UC Berkeley, and I worked there on my research around entrepreneurial ecosystems. And that's a little bit where I got into the entrepreneurial mindset. This is contagious, you meet amazing people who are building companies, and so that is how I continued my career. I built a little bit my own startup to help entrepreneurs find co-founders. It was called Founders Fit, and I couldn't make it work in a year and a half. Couldn't monetize at the scale. So I moved to venture 10 years ago now. I was already in London at the time. I moved from California to London for personal reasons, in fact. But London was a great place to be after 2010 when everything started exploding. And so I got into venture, started investing in startups, and I've been there since. So right now I'm at Notion Capital, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But prior to Notion, I was running Microsoft Ventures in Europe, so doing a little bit more of the investments. And for a bigger corporates, I worked also in a micro fund earlier in my career, a company called Easy One Capital, as well as some family offices in between too. So doing investments in different areas. And randomly, I stumbled here, and I've been here for 3 years and a half at Notion, and I think this is the place definitely. If it feels is home for me, and I feel very, very good at it.
Wow, what an amazing story. And I love how it began with ballet, and that path eventually led you to Notion Capital, which, as you mentioned, is a European VC fund in the B2B SaaS and Cloud space with more than $700 million in assets under management right now. But can you offer a bit of an overview of what you do and your area of focus at Notion?
Sure. So, look, Notion was started 13 years ago. Yeah. And that was started in London, and we are still headquartered in London, investing across Europe, but everyone is in London. We have over 10 nationalities in the team, in a team of over 20. So you can see that we are a very international team. But we are based in London. I think there are two things that differentiate Notion from other VCs. One is our crystal clear focused on B2B SaaS. That is the only thing we do. We don't do marketplaces. We don't do consumer. We've been only doing B2B SaaS for the last 13 years. And that sounds pretty trivial, obvious today, because many people are doing B2B SaaS. But in 2008, we probably pioneered the B2B SaaS trend. And that is related to the second stronger differentiator for Notion. And that is that we are all operators who became investors. Everyone within the company has an operating background and has been building companies before. We don't come from a consulting background. We don't come from a financial background. Specifically, the three founders of Notion built the biggest SaaS early story in Europe, cloud SaaS story or a company in Europe. And that was MessageLabs. It was a cloud security business, and it grew from zero revenue to 150 million in revenue between 2000 and 2008. And they ended up selling it to Symantec for a pretty good return. And they built Notion the day after. Wow. So that was a pretty interesting story that set up the basis of Notion. Notion was created the day after. That was the first company they were building. Unlike myself, I tried to build my own company. I was not as successful. But in terms of focus, we continue focusing in the same thing that we did in 2008 when we started Notion. And that is B2B SaaS Series A opportunities across Europe. So we are backing the people who are building the next generation of cloud solutions, cloud infrastructure, Internet of Things, open source, everything on a SaaS platform.
And what really stands out on both your story and the story behind Notion is that the great story and journey that you've both been on. And for anyone listening anywhere in the world that's interested in entering the VC industry, I'm curious, is there a particular path they should take, or is it much more complex than that? Because listening to your story, it sounds like there is no such thing as that one path to get to from A to B. It will vary from person to person. But what would you say to someone listening out there?
It's very interesting because the industry, in fact, has grown significantly, but it's not that big. So many people are trying to break into venture capital, and it is not that easy. So this is a question that I get very often, in fact. And I tend to respond that I don't think there is a clear path to get into VC and to be a good VC, which means choosing the right opportunities which are going to grow fast and are going to become big return on investment for your fund, right? But I do think there are three main characteristics or skills that people need to develop or have in certain way to be an investor. One is technology acumen. So we'll use the word acumen because it doesn't mean that you need to be an engineer. Yeah. You don't need to be technologically super knowledgeable. You don't need to have a PhD like I do in an engineering degree, right? You need to understand technology and be keen on exploring different technologies. We are learning every single day about new technologies, about new applications, and we can't be afraid. We need to be looking to develop that. So that's technology is one. The second one is financial acumen again. So it doesn't mean that you need an MBA, a finance degree. In fact, we only have one MBA person in our investment team among 13 people. Only one person has taken an MBA. And the reason is because you really need to understand what is a balance sheet, what is a P&L, play a little bit with numbers, and have in reality a critical mindset, challenge everything, but be able to understand some of those financial statements so that you can analyze them and be critical with them. Okay, so that's the second one. And the third one is psychology. You need a lot of psychology and deep psychology to understand people, to deal with people, to invest in people and work with people through good times and bad times. Because guess what? This is a roller coaster for all these entrepreneurs. And that's something that we are very empathetic with, right? We have huge empathy for entrepreneurs who are building companies. We've been there. We know how tough it is. And so we really try to recognize who are those founders who are willing to break walls to make that happen.
And on the subject of tech startups and the world of VC, I'm seeing more and more that product-led growth will actually be the key to the expansion, explosion, and even domination of European software companies globally. I wonder, could you expand on that and what you're seeing and any insights that you can share around that?
I see, Neil, that you've been doing a little bit of research about me online because I write a lot about the topic. That's good. So yes, product-led growth, I can tell everyone on the podcast what that means. Product-led growth is a way to sell SaaS. So it only applies to SaaS companies. And it is basically the understanding on the product sales by itself. So think of companies like Zoom or Slack or Pipedrive, which is a CRM, right? Started in Estonia. All those companies, as a user, as a consumer, as a prosumer, called prosumer, a professional who is using the software. We go online, we take our credit card, we buy the software, and we can start using it by ourselves. It is true that if we work for a company, they have some enterprise deal where we can also use that. But we can just go online and start using it. And those are Airtable. There are many of those companies, right? A Factorial, many of those PLG companies. So the same way we go to a store, we try some shoes. You try before you buy. You can do that with product-led growth. You go online, you try the product for free, and then you buy it. Why is this an incredible opportunity for businesses? So think of COVID has totally pushed sales teams to sell online. So now sales team, during COVID specifically, they couldn't go door to door and meeting other people to sell. So they needed to sell online. So imagine if you don't need someone to explain to you how to onboard in this product, but rather the product is so sleek, takes you through, that you get onboarded very easily into the product. You can start using it. You can start collaborating with people on the product. And that's the way it grows. That's the way Zoom works, right? all these companies that can grow organically and can sell through the product. So I do think that today you can be in Nigeria, you can be in Estonia, you can be in Switzerland, and you can be selling to US markets, which are probably the biggest and most homogeneous market in terms of currency, in terms of buying appetite, right? Because they are such big countries in India, in China, probably to sell SaaS. I would say the US is still the biggest market, but you don't need to be there. You don't need sales teams anymore. So this presents an incredible opportunity for any European company that can try the US market before they start setting up sales teams. Because I'm not saying that product-led growth doesn't need sales teams eventually. You want to expand those accounts. You want to work with these people once they try the product through the website. And so then you can expand absolutely to the US and to other countries. But you can start definitely selling and testing those products remotely. And that's an incredible opportunity.
And on behalf of every startup founder listening anywhere in the world to this podcast today, nodding in agreement with everything you've just said, the question that every founder in the B2B SaaS and cloud space will want the answer to is, how can they get on your radar? I appreciate you probably got a lot of people after your time, but what kind of things are you looking for?
Yeah, but that's a good question. And a lot of people ask me that. So it is true that there is a lot of money in the market, but it is also true that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, and we see many deals on a monthly basis, thousands of deals come through the door on a monthly basis. So you need to be unique, and you need to get to my inbox and get me to look at it, right? So the best way, and I know this is very, very well known, but the best way to get to me is through an introduction. Yeah. Somebody who knows me and can make an introduction, can recommend that I take the time to look at your business. And I always think, and many entrepreneurs say, yeah, but I didn't know anybody. You surely can get to someone, and you don't need to rush. You don't need to rush. And in fact, there is something I always tell entrepreneurs to do when they start raising money, and it is create a list on Excel of the people that you want to raise money from. The ones on the top are going to be probably the 5 people that you admire, usually invest in that space. You're right. And you are like, oh, those are my favorites. So you write them very quickly. And then it's pretty difficult to get to a 25 people list, but really force yourself and create a list of 20, 25 people. The people on the bottom, many of them, they are not that relevant. And many of them might be people that you know, and probably they will not put money in. But that's fine. You just put them there. And what you do, you start talking to people from the bottom, never from the top. What that allows you to do is to, one, refine your pitch, because obviously every time you are pitching to these people, you are becoming better and better. You are absorbing the feedback. By the time you get to the top, to your 5 favorite people, your pitch is a killer. You really know how to answer all these questions. So number 1. And 2, on the way to the top, surely you find someone who knows these people on the top. And so that's for sure, because if the other ones are in the industry, for sure they will know the people on the top. And so before you leave the meetings, you ask these people, who are the next 2 people I should meet in this space? Who are the 2 people who could invest, right? And the last question is, how can I help you? Because this is always I give and I get.
And it's so obvious what you said there, but I love the fact that you start at the bottom and move up to the top. It makes so much sense. And I'm curious, are there any other trends, any other traits that you look for in founders that you're looking out for as well?
So I am a product-led investor, as you has probably said. Not all investors look at the same areas, and it's like dating. I mean, you are dating people, and not everyone is looking for the same thing. Otherwise, this will be a problem. Everyone will like the same person, right? So we look for different things when we are looking for the perfect match. So same for me. I'm a very product-led investor, and therefore I really invest in founders who are obsessed with building the best product for their businesses, and for the users, sorry, not for the customers, for their customers. They want to please their customers. They really want that product. And usually these people are insiders in the industry. They are looking at it as from an outsider view. They felt the pain in the past, and they want to solve that pain. They know how that pain feels. And they are like, no, this shouldn't be that way. Let's try to change it. And they look at it from the outsider view. So I look at product-led founders, insiders to an industry. And that means there is a very intense and good match, product, market, and founder match. So there is that good connection between those, among the three of them.
And it's funny you should say that, because in nearly 2,000 interviews on this podcast, one of the questions people say is, do any of these successful people have anything in common? And one of the main things I will say, especially around founders, is they're working in an industry, they've experienced a problem, and whereas many will just complain about it or put a moany status up on Facebook or something, they go away and create a solution to that problem. So it is something that I see time and time again too. So assuming though a founder has your attention, they've refined that pitch, they've got the killer pitch, what is the best thing founders can do to blow away investors beyond their entrepreneurial vision? Is there anything else you'd recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So, you need to be outstanding. You don't need to be good. You need to be outstanding. So I see very good pitches. I see very good founders, very good. And there is something that really triggers my attention. And that is when I leave the meeting and I feel that I really want to have a next meeting. And that means I learned something. These people know really well the space. They really know the user, the customer they are building for. And that's the insider of the industry that we were just talking about, right? They really know that. And they are telling me things that, in fact, I don't know. They are not very obvious things. You know what I mean? Yeah. They are pretty much things that other people who are coming as outsiders will not know upfront. Right? Yeah. Because if that is the case, if they are telling me things that everybody knows, then I'm not interested. Mm. And the reality is that I see many businesses. I see pitches every single day. And just to give you an example, in the benefits space, right? I've been looking a lot at the employee benefit. And you probably know I invested in a company called ULife, which provides life insurance for businesses. So it's a benefit. And because of that, I've been sitting on that board. I work a lot with the founders. I can very much understand how businesses buy benefits, how the go-to-market could work, how do they choose one benefit against another one, and so on and so on. So now any company that comes to me and is selling a benefit, and that can be a marketplace for sports, anything. I mean, some sort of budget for meals, learning, a budget for learning, and a marketplace for learning opportunities, anything. I do have so many questions I can go to and resources on the go-to-market that if I don't feel the entrepreneurs know more than I do, why should I invest? And the reality is that many entrepreneurs look at my background to come to me and to pitch their businesses. Why do they do that? Because they see I've invested in similar businesses. That is good on the one hand side because I will be able to invest, to help. But it is also tricky because I know a lot about the space. So the questions I will ask are pretty deep. Yeah. You better know really well what is your differentiating factor there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely love that. And what about yourself, though? What excites you about working in this space? What makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning? Because, as you said, you see lots of pictures, a lot of things bouncing around. A lot of it will be very similar. So how do you keep that passion alive, and what really excites you?
Honestly, Neil, I felt very lucky to be working in this industry. I work with the most ambitious people who want to change the world, wants to build new things. Every day is a new learning, new opportunity, working with really incredible people. It is. So I don't think I need to find anything different than what my job offers. And I always say that when we hire people, I try to hire people that are absolutely motivated to be working in this industry. If I need to be motivating anyone, they are probably not right for this industry because it is so exciting. So exciting. And I would say, to me, SaaS is an incredible space to be investing in right now. Because of COVID, what I mentioned before, many businesses have gone to the cloud, banking, healthcare, places where regulatory frameworks were so tight, but they were forced to go to the cloud, to move to the cloud. They have softened up their procurement processes so that now they can make decisions much faster. And because of that, our businesses are flying, are growing so fast. And that is incredibly exciting, right? So, I don't need to motivate myself. Entrepreneurs really give me that energy and that motivation to continue working with them.
And it does feel like an incredibly exciting time for you at the moment. So what's next for you? What's your big focus at Notion Capital? Is there anything you can share about the road ahead?
I think we are going to continue doing the same thing we have been doing until today in terms of the investment focus, SaaS, cloud, and in terms of the support that we give to our founders. But personally, I am very, very excited about the models which include a SaaS with a transaction. Basically, make every business build revenue through the transaction, which is a very tiny revenue, but it is value-based. And it's in many cases almost non-disturbing and not too big for the customers, right? Because you might be taking it from a MasterCard or a Visa or a Stripe, but not for your customers. So it's a hidden revenue. And it is a growing revenue. It's a value-based revenue. And we have many businesses in our portfolio which are developing those sort of solutions and products. And those can be Muse in the hospitality space where you help hotels with all the system for the rooms, but you also take a little bit of the transaction of every room that is booked. Or a Glowfox, where you go, you give a software to the gyms to manage their subscriptions and the bookings of the classes, and you take a little bit of a cut. Or a Cledara, which helps the companies managing their SaaS, and they help them buy SaaS through the tool. Every time you buy, you get a little bit. Or Paddle, which became a unicorn yesterday, which is basically allows SaaS companies to sell SaaS. And on each of those transactions, they are taking a little cut. And that is how they got into over 100 million in revenue, right?
Incredibly cool. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and sharing so many invaluable insights and tips and expertise for people listening all over the world, in particularly founders and entrepreneurs, etc. But I'm going to ask you to leave us with one more thing before I let you go. And that is, I always like to ask my guests if you can share, I don't know, a song that we can add to our Spotify playlist that might inspire people, or a book that we can add to our Amazon wish list. Is there anything that you would leave, and is there a story behind that choice too? So
I recently, everyone who knows me, they know that I'm very healthy and I take care of my fitness and my diet, my sleep. It's very, very important to me. Also because I'm a productivity freak. And without being very healthy, then you cannot be 100% productive. And there is something that I've been following religiously, in fact, and that is the circadian code, the circadian cycles, which basically it is the idea that our body, we respond to the light, the daylight, the sunlight. Obviously, we are disturbed by the artificial light in the buildings today and in the rooms and so on. But we are our body responds to this the light of the sun, and therefore, if you think of people who work overnight, they do have huge problems over time at the end of their lives. And the reason is because they've been forcing their body to work at a time that it was not natural for our body to work, when we wanted to sleep. And that creates a disruption in your cycle, right?
Yeah.
And so there are a couple of books in this space. There is one by Sachin Panda, Dr. Sachin Panda, Sachin, Panda. And it's called Circadian Code. And in fact, it is focused on explaining you, rather than what you eat and how much do you sleep, when do you do those during the day? So when do we eat? Are we eating at 6 p.m.? Are we having dinner at 8 p.m.? You know, I'm Spanish. We already figured out from my accent. You know, we ate very late there. For me, there is no Spanish dinners anymore, right? How can we eat before the sun goes down? It is similar to intermediate fasting, but not exactly the same, because we respond to the sunlight. So even though I go to bed at 12, I cannot be eating at 10. Yeah. Which is 2 hours before. I need to be eating before the sun goes down so that my body can process the food. I need to be sleeping my hours. I need to be exposed to the sunlight at least for a half an hour a day. Yeah. And those sort of things. And the book it's for me has been transformational. And I would recommend anybody to read it. And he has the second book now, which is more oriented to people with diabetes. But I'm talking about a book that he wrote maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that. And it is a general book and helps you sleep better, be much more productive, and absolutely also get leaner and even lose weight if you would like to.
And yes, I do. So I will be checking out that book. I will be adding that to our Amazon wish list for everybody listening too. And before I let you go, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about Notion Capital, contacting your team, maybe starting at the bottom, and what's the best way of doing that?
Excellent. Absolutely. So our website is notion.vc. Venture capital, Notion.vc. And in fact, I would recommend anyone to go to the website and to check the content that we have. We create a lot of content around SaaS, a lot of content, podcasts on go-to-market, on recruitment, a lot of stuff, which I think it's very interesting if you are building a SaaS business. So that's a good way to get in touch. And you can, as I say, get in touch through the website, but the best way is to get an introduction. Personally, I'm very active in LinkedIn. I write a lot of things. So engaging with this content, I write, or sending me a note is sometimes a good way also to connect with me. It's I spend quite a lot of time on LinkedIn.
Well, again, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story with me today. I think we covered so much there, from how product-led growth will be the key to the expansion, explosion, and even domination of European software companies, to the traits that you look for in founders, and also your very personal story, and just highlights how there is no one route to entering the VC industry or one-size-fits-all paths. They just don't exist. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and share that with me today.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, Neil, for inviting me. And let me know if everyone that is listening to us that want to get in touch, please reach out. We are always happy to hear from you.
What an amazing lady, and an inspiring, unconventional journey to the world of venture capitalism, which included a decade of classical ballet, working on the assembly line at DaimlerChrysler, a master's in engineering, and ultimately a PhD in entrepreneurship. What a great, great, inspiring story. This one I will remember for a long time. And that's why I record this podcast. Yes, to learn more about the tech industry, how technology can transform businesses and our lives and even world, but also share human stories of of how anyone can achieve their dream career in tech. And I'd love to hear your story too. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @Neil C. Hughes. And my website, if you'd like to work with me, is techblogwriter.co.uk. So today was the world of venture capitalism. I'm going to spin the wheel of fortune now and see what topic we will discuss tomorrow. But to find out where it lands, well, I'm afraid you're going to have to come back and join me again. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.